screen flickers, grainy footage. A pilot's voice cuts through static, short, clipped. Visual on multiple fast movers, low profile, repeat, low profile, then the camera dips. You catch it for half a second. Dark water, thin wakes slicing across the surface. Fast attack boats, dozens. A second later, that sound. Not an explosion, not yet. A metallic growl, deep, mechanical. The GAU-8 spins up. You don't see the rounds. You see what's left behind. White splashes, then fragments. Then nothing where a boat used to be. Cut. Another feed. Different angle. Night vision green. A drone hangs in the air, steady, patient. Below it, coastal infrastructure, fuel lines, small docks, heat signatures moving like ants. No music, just rotor wash and radio chatter. Now zoom out. This isn't one strike, it's a pattern. Aircraft cycling in waves, signals traffic spiking, naval movement tightening around a narrow strip of water the entire global economy depends on. And somewhere behind all of that, quietly, teams are already moving. No headlines yet, no official confirmation. But if you know what you're looking at, you can tell this isn't posturing anymore. This is the setup phase. The Strait of Hormuz doesn't look like much on a map. A thin line, narrow, almost forgettable. But stand on a deck out there, salt in the air, engines humming under your feet, and you realize fast, everything funnels through this choke point. Tankers, gas carriers, military patrols, all of it squeezed into a corridor barely wide enough to control, but just wide enough to fight over. Roughly a fifth of the world's oil passes through here. Not some abstract number. Real ships, real schedules, real consequences if anything slows down. Iran knows that, always has. For decades, their strategy hasn't been about matching the US ship for ship or plane for plane. That would be suicide. Instead, they built something else. Layered denial. Small, fast attack boats, hard to track, harder to hit in numbers. Mobile missile batteries tucked into coastal terrain. Move, fire, disappear. Drones, cheap, expendable, persistent. And behind that, the IRGC. Not just a military force, a parallel system, funding pipelines, regional proxies, internal control mechanisms. You don't dismantle something like that with a single strike. Now here's where it shifts. Over the past cycles, hours, days, depending on how you measure tempo, you start seeing indicators stack up. Increased air activity patterns, not random, but structured ISR platforms holding longer than usual over key nodes. Maritime traffic adjusting routes, not publicly explained. Communications noise, then sudden silence in specific bands. That combination doesn't happen by accident. It suggests preparation, not full-scale invasion, not yet, but something more precise, more contained. And that's where special operations come in. Because when you're dealing with hardened sites, mobile missile units, underground infrastructure, and a network like the IRGC, air power alone isn't enough. You can hit targets, you can degrade systems, but you can't confirm. You can't walk into a facility, crack open a hardened door, pull drives, verify damage, or identify what's still operational. And that gap, that uncertainty, is exactly where things get dangerous. Because if you assume something is destroyed when it isn't, you don't just make a mistake. You hand the other side an opportunity. You don't start with boots on the ground. Not in a place like this. You start by shaping the environment. One, air superiority, or at least the illusion of it. The first thing you notice is altitude layers. High up, strategic bombers. Long arcs, predictable, almost slow. Mid-level, fighters cycling in patterns, not chasing, just holding presence. Low, where it gets dangerous. That's where the A-10 lives. Low, slow, exposed. It shouldn't survive in a dense air defense environment. And yet, when it shows up, it means something important has already happened. Either air defenses have been suppressed or someone is willing to accept the risk. Neither is a casual decision. The A-10 isn't there for dominance. It's there for precision violence. Close air support, surgical, immediate. And then you layer in the rest. A C-130 circling at night, steady, methodical. Guns walking across targets like a slow, deliberate sweep. AH-64, Apaches hovering just outside visual range, waiting for anything that moves wrong. MQ-9 Reapers above it all, quiet, feeding data. This isn't chaos, it's orchestration. But here's the problem. Air power can break things. It can't tell you what survived. And in Iran's case, a lot survives. 2. The real target isn't hardware, it's control. People fixate on missiles, drones, boats. That's surface level. The real system is command and control, C2. The IRGC doesn't operate like a conventional military. It's fragmented by design, redundant, compartmentalized. You take out one node, another picks up. So the question becomes, how do you break something that doesn't rely on a single point of failure? You don't bomb it flat, you go inside it. That's where special operations come in. 3. Special operations, the quiet phase nobody sees. No announcements, no press briefings. Just movement. Small teams, inserted in ways that don't leave a signature. Night drops, maritime insertions, maybe even overland routes that never show up on a map. Each unit has a different job. Rangers, fast, direct, violent when needed. Airfield seizures, rapid raids. They don't linger. In and out, clear the objective. Secure just enough for follow-on forces, if those forces ever come. Navy SEALs, water is their domain. You're not storming beaches like it's 1944. You're slipping in, quiet, controlled. Vessel interdictions, underwater demolitions, coastal reconnaissance. Sometimes the mission isn't to destroy, it's to watch. Map patterns, count movements, identify what hasn't been hit yet. Delta Force. Different role entirely. They don't go for infrastructure first. They go for people. High-value targets, decision makers, the ones who keep the system functioning. You remove enough of those, and suddenly the network doesn't coordinate the way it used to. Orders slow down, confusion spreads. That's the effect you're after. Not noise, disruption. 4. The Strait of Hormuz, the pressure point. Everything loops back here. You don't need to occupy the entire coastline. You just need to control the choke points. Fast attack boats are the obvious threat. Swarm tactics, hard to track in volume. But they rely on something. Ports, refueling points, command hubs. You don't chase every boat. You shut the door they come out of. Now imagine this. A narrow harbor entrance, dark, quiet. Then charges placed at just the right structural points. No dramatic explosion, just collapse. Concrete shifts, debris sinks, passage blocked. Suddenly, dozens of boats are trapped inside. You didn't destroy them. You made them irrelevant. That's efficiency. 5. Sensitive site exploitation. The part air power can't do. This is where things get uncomfortable. You hit a suspected nuclear facility from the air. Satellite shows damage, fires, structural collapse. Looks convincing. But is it done? You don't know, because centrifuges can be underground, hardened, redundant. So someone has to go in, physically. Open doors, check systems, pull samples, extract data. Hard drives, documents, anything that tells you what's left. This is called sensitive site exploitation. And it's slow, dangerous, uncertain. You're inside hostile territory with incomplete information, hoping your intel was right. Sometimes it isn't, and that's where operations go sideways. 6. What happens if this escalates? Let's say negotiations stall or fracture internally. That's when the tempo changes. You start seeing larger formations staged nearby, Marine Expeditionary Units offshore elements of the 82nd Airborne pre-positioned logistics lines tightening. Not deployed yet, just ready. Because if small teams aren't enough, you scale. Airfields get seized, ports get secured. Now you're not just shaping the battlefield, you're holding it. And that's a completely different phase. 7. Iran's counterplay. Limited but not irrelevant. Iran isn't blind. They still have drones, ballistic missiles, proxy networks. Even if degraded, they can still create pressure. Not decisive, but disruptive. False claims, information warfare. Occasional strikes meant more for signaling than impact. The goal isn't to win outright. It's to stretch the timeline, create uncertainty, force mistakes. Because the longer this drags, the more variables enter the equation. 8. The reality most people miss. This isn't about overwhelming force. Not yet. It's about control. Control of information, timing, access. Small units, precise actions, limited footprint. Because once you cross into full-scale invasion, you don't get to scale it back easily. And everyone involved knows that. Which is why right now, everything feels restrained. But only just. Step back from the map. Zoom out. The ships, the aircraft, the teams moving in the dark. That's just the surface layer. What's really happening here is something older. a pattern. Control the choke point. Control the flow, control the pressure. Hormuz isn't just geography, it's leverage. You restrict it, even partially, and markets react before governments do. Insurance rates spike. Shipping routes shift. Energy prices ripple outward. Asia feels it. Europe feels it. Even countries far removed from the region start adjusting policy based on a strip of water they'll never see. That's the first lesson. You don't need to win everywhere. You just need to control the place that matters most. Now look at how force is being applied. Not mass formations, not columns of armor pushing inland. Instead, small teams, precision strikes, targeted disruption. That's not accidental, that's evolution. After 2 decades of large-scale interventions that dragged on, Afghanistan, Iraq, the tolerance for prolonged ground wars is low. Politically, economically, strategically. So the model shifts. You apply pressure without full commitment. You degrade without occupying. You influence without owning the outcome. It sounds clean. It isn't. Because here's the trade-off. When you don't fully commit, you also don't fully control the result. You create gaps, and those gaps get filled by local actors, by proxies, by factions you don't entirely understand. Look at Iran's structure again. Decentralized, redundant, adaptive. That's not a weakness. That's survival design. It means even if you damage infrastructure, disrupt command nodes, remove key individuals, you rarely get a clean collapse. Instead, you get fragmentation. And fragmentation is dangerous because now you're not dealing with one decision maker. You're dealing with multiple, some more aggressive, some less predictable, some with less to lose. That's the second lesson. Breaking a system doesn't always stabilize it. Sometimes it just makes it harder to predict. Now layer in the global dimension. Every major power is watching this kind of operation closely. Not for the politics, but for the method. How effective are small unit insertions against hardened infrastructure? How resilient are drone-heavy defenses? How quickly can air power suppress decentralized threats? These aren't theoretical questions anymore. They're case studies, and they'll shape how future conflicts are planned, from Eastern Europe to the Pacific. Then there's escalation, always sitting just under the surface, because even if the initial operations are limited, the variables aren't. A misidentified target, a civilian casualty event, a strike that hits the wrong note at the wrong time. That's how contained conflicts expand. Not through strategy, but through error. And once escalation begins, it doesn't move in clean steps. It jumps. One more thing most people underestimate: time. Short, precise operations feel controlled, manageable. But if objectives aren't fully met, they repeat, then repeat again, cycles. And over time, even limited actions start to accumulate into something larger, something harder to exit cleanly. That's how temporary pressure becomes a long-term posture. So the final takeaway here isn't about who has more firepower. It's about how power is applied, carefully, incrementally, sometimes invisibly, but always with consequences that extend far beyond the immediate battlefield. The feed cuts again. No explosion this time, just silence. A drone camera lingers over dark water. No movement, no wakes. The surface is flat, almost calm, like nothing ever happened there. But that's misleading, because what matters isn't what you see in that moment. It's what's no longer there. No traffic leaving port. No signals where there used to be chatter. No coordination where there used to be structure. That absence, that's the effect. Here's the reality. Operations like this don't end with a clear line. No victory parade, no obvious conclusion. They fade. Pressure applied, systems disrupted. Then, a pause. And everyone involved starts asking the same question: was it enough? Because if it was, you step back. You let the region stabilize on its own terms. But if it wasn't, you go again. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not publicly, but the cycle resumes. And that's the uncomfortable truth most people don't like to sit with. This kind of strategy, precision, limited footprint, controlled escalation, it doesn't solve the problem. It manages it, temporarily, until the next fracture point appears. So when you look at movements like these, aircraft patterns, naval positioning, quiet insertions, you're not looking at the end of something. You're looking at a phase. One move in a longer game that doesn't reset, it just shifts. And right now, if you read the patterns carefully, it hasn't de-escalated. It's just waiting for the next decision.